I thought I was living alone until I discovered someone had been living in my walls the entire time. Story 1. A few weeks ago, I moved into a seemingly ordinary house, but what I've uncovered is anything but ordinary. I think someone is living within the walls of my home. It all began innocently enough with subtle, unexplainable noises that I tried to brush off as the house settling or the wind outside. But as the days passed, those noises grew more persistent, more eerie. Late at night, I'd hear faint whispering, like a clandestine conversation just beyond the drywall. One evening, curiosity got the better of me, and I decided to investigate. Armed with a flashlight and a sense of dread, I began knocking on the walls to locate the source of the sounds. That's when I stumbled upon a loose panel in the basement. It led to a narrow, dark passage. I had to know what was hidden within. Crawling through the cramped space, my heart pounding, I reached the small chamber where dim candlelight flickered. There, I found a makeshift bed, old photographs, and eerie drawings on the walls. It was clear that someone had been living here, in my house, undetected, for who knows how long. The walls were adorned with names and dates, all pointing to a single conclusion. This secret occupant wasn't alone. They had companions, and the most chilling part was that some of those dates were recent, suggesting others had ventured into these walls but never returned. My blood ran cold as I heard footsteps approaching the entrance to the passage. Panicked, I retreated back to the basement, sealed the panel, and tried to pretend that what I saw and heard didn't exist. But the whispering continued, growing louder and more sinister. I can't escape the feeling that I'm being watched, that there are eyes on me even when I'm alone. I don't know who these hidden occupants are, what they want, or what secrets lie within the walls of my house. I'm trapped here, read it, and I fear that the presence lurking in the dark may not be content to stay hidden much longer. Please, help me. Story 2. I live alone in a modest one-bedroom apartment. It's nothing fancy, but it's affordable and the neighborhood is decent. I moved in about 6 months ago, and for the most part, it's been fine. But lately, weird little things have been happening. One evening, I came back from work and my window was open like someone had been in my room. I never open my windows. It's a habit from growing up in a rough neighborhood. I double-check locks, I keep my blinds shut, but that night the window was open. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe I forgot. Maybe maintenance came by and didn't tell me. But deep down, I knew that didn't make sense. Then last night happened. I woke up around 3 in the morning to this creaking sound. Not a house settling kind of creak. Someone is walking in my apartment kind of creak. I just laid there, barely breathing, listening. Everything was silent for a minute, then another creak, closer this time. I grabbed my phone, turned on the flashlight, aimed it at my bedroom door. Nothing. The door was still closed. I told myself I was just imagining things, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. So I got up, checked every closet, every corner. Front door was locked, windows were shut. I was about to go back to bed when I noticed something weird. There's a vent in the corner of my living room, one of those big floor vents. I've never really looked at it before, but now I could see that the metal grate was loose, like someone had pried it open and put it back. I knelt down, shined my flashlight inside, and I saw something that made my stomach drop. A blanket, a half-empty water bottle, a crumpled fast food wrapper. Someone had been living in my walls. I just sat there, staring at it, not even breathing. It felt like my brain was short-circuiting, trying to put everything together. The missing food, the open window, the creaks in the night. I didn't sleep. I didn't even stay. I grabbed my keys, walked straight out the door, and crashed at my friend's place. I went back this morning. The vent? Closed again. I don't know what's worse. The fact that someone was living there, or the fact that he knows I found out. Story 3. Nothing appeared to be out of the ordinary once I arrived back at my room. My dorm room was at the end of the hallway, making it the most isolated. I fumbled the key into the door lock and pushed the heavy door open. The room wasn't exactly clean since neither me nor my roommate were concerned about organization back then. My roommate was lying on his bed, facing the window. It looked like he was watching something on Netflix while wearing those cheap Apple earbuds. For unknown reasons, I decided to drop my backpack and clean up the dirty clothes scattered across the shag rug we bought for the room. The room smelled like a rotting body, so I opened the windows all the way. I kept the laundry hamper on the right side of my closet so I could easily toss clothes into it. My aim was off that day, so I had to pick up some shirts and boxers that missed the basket. That's when I noticed that something was off. My lockbox, which was typically hidden on the top shelf, was unlocked and on a lower shelf. The key was jammed inside the lock, and this immediately confused me because that key hadn't left my keychain since I put it on. Alarmed, I picked up the small metal box and dropped it on my bed, opening the box to reveal its contents. Without a thorough look, nothing seemed to be missing. The knives were still there, along with my wallet, a carton of cigarettes, and a mason jar holding my weed. I removed the rubber band off my wad of cash and counted it out. Surprisingly, none of the $500 was stolen. However, still concerned and believing that I wouldn't leave my lockbox open, I decided to look through the contents, just in case. Surprise, surprise, someone jacked about an eighth of weed and most of my cigarettes. I immediately turned to my roommate and threw out some accusations, telling him to buy his own damn weed and not steal mine. I do fully regret doing this and not asking him politely like I should have, but anger overpowered me. I value everything that I own, mainly because I buy my own necessities with my own money. I was raised to appreciate what I own and to appreciate my property. Eventually, I calmed down and apologized to him for losing my temper so quickly. I offered him a beer, which he declined. I was in the mood for one myself after getting worked up and having an adrenaline rush. I opened my fridge and reached for a beer, and my fridge was empty. I yelled, "The fuck?" in the astonished state that I was in. I glared at my roommate again, but it was impossible that this guy could have taken the contents of my fridge, let alone want to take my shit. I started to go through all my boxes and drawers like a madman to see what else was missing. Aside from some open and empty food packages like chips and pretzels, nothing was out of place. So as of that point, I knew that someone had taken my drugs, cigarettes, drinks, and some of my food too. I ran my hands through my hair while I contemplated speaking with the resident's assistant about the issue at hand. After some thought, I decided to wait. I wanted to see what was really going on, or at the very least, if my roommate was stealing my stuff. Being a sophomore gave me the confidence to think I could outsmart most idiots out there, and clearly I was wrong. I decided to leave my computer on that day and let the webcam record the area around my bed and microfridge. If you don't know what that is, it's basically a mini fridge with a microwave built into the top of it. I left for class at 10:30 and wouldn't be back until at least 2 or 3 in the afternoon, giving the culprit plenty of time to get caught. The day went by so damn slowly while I was sitting in class during those handful of hours. Having back-to-back-to-back history classes was pretty dreadful, even for a history major. My room was the first place I headed to once class ended. I could already feel my adrenaline start to flow through my veins as I was overcome with the excitement of catching the culprit. I threw my door open, not only to be disappointed, but dumbfounded. I thought I was a smart and clever one. However, it was clear that this person was one step ahead of me. They literally wrote "one step ahead of you" in sloppy script on a post-it note that was stuck to my computer screen. A folded piece of paper was also taped onto the screen to cover the webcam, clearly to block its view of the room. I immediately stopped the recording and played through the footage. While I was fast-forwarding through the recording, I noticed that after the half-hour mark, the entire recording went black. That was obviously when they covered my video camera. But they didn't stop the recording, and I could hear someone rustle through bags of food and open a fridge, and sure enough, my bottled waters were missing, along with some open food bags that were left under my bed. This pissed me off beyond belief, and I was ready for war with this thief. That same night, I ordered 2 hidden cameras from Amazon. They were disguised as those generic white USB wall chargers you get with an iPhone. I already had 2 of them plugged into the outlets in my room, so I knew that the culprit wouldn't notice anything strange. I made sure to next day ship them so I could catch this criminal. The time had come. I had already set up both hidden cameras in my room. One was facing my roommate's desk and bed, and the other was plugged into an outlet on the microfridge. I knew if the thief came back, I would see their face clear as day. I had my consecutive history classes that day, so I knew there was lots of time for them to break in. Sure enough, 2 rolled around and my final classes missed. It was time to finally catch this fucker. I practically ran back to my room and got to my door, and the first thing that was unusual was that our door was unlocked. My roommate and I followed a strict code to always lock the door whenever we left the room. He was still in class, so clearly someone else unlocked the door. My room was visibly messier than I had left it. The fridge was left open, trash was left on the floor, although the 2 full trash bags I left in the corner of the room this morning were gone for some reason, and some miscellaneous items were pulled out of the closet. Assuming the culprit was just recently in the room, I grabbed the camera facing my roommate's side of the room and hooked it up to my laptop. Sure enough, a tall figure walked by the camera. He had messy long hair and appeared to be pretty skinny. I decided to check the second camera since this one didn't give me a full view. God, it's hard to even type out what I saw. I plugged the USB cord into my laptop and connected it to the camera. I opened the footage and hit play. The first 10 minutes weren't out of the ordinary. Me gathering my books and heading to class. A few minutes passed after I left until he entered the room. He didn't open the door. He didn't break it down or have a key to open it. He didn't climb in a window. He crawled out of my closet. He literally crawled out of my fucking closet. I had to stop the video and sit down and rewatch it a few times just to be sure that I saw it correctly. Sadly, I was right. This fucker crawled out of my closet, took all the waters from my fridge and a few bags of chips and stuffed them into an old cardboard box. At some point, he left the room and disposed of the garbage bags and came sprinting back into the room. He grabbed his box with my food and water and disappeared into my closet. I almost passed out while watching the footage, probably because I forgot to breathe. I grabbed the flash drive and put the footage on a drive. I ejected it from my computer, grabbed the pocket knife from my drawer, and left the room. I texted my roommate telling him not to go in the room and that he'd thank me later. The second I was out of my building, I engaged in a full-on sprint until I reached the public safety office on campus. Once inside, I did my best to tell the man at the desk to let me meet with an officer while I gasped for air. I met the officer in an office and I asked him to let me use his computer. I threw the flash drive into the tower and played the video for the officer. I'm not exaggerating when I say this. This guy ran out of the office, grabbed 2 more officers, and ran towards my building while calling the local police department. I opened the door to my room for them and they pulled everything out of the closet. They discovered that a large part of the side of the wooden closet was loose and they removed it. They found a tunnel, literally a fucking tunnel that led somewhere into the thick wall. We could hear the man screaming to leave him alone and threatening to kill us. 2 officers, guns drawn, pulled the man out of the tunnel. He looked to be in his 50s or so. I'm sitting here writing this in the library because my room is currently a crime scene. They said it should all be clear in a few hours and offered to give me a different room temporarily. I know they already arrested the creep and investigated his hiding place, but something doesn't feel right about this whole thing. I don't know if it's just me being paranoid, but I don't feel safe here anymore. This guy could have killed me any time when I would have least expected to.
Story 4. Everything was perfectly normal until I awoke one night to the sound of breathing. Slow, wheezing breaths seemingly right next to my head. I bolted upright, fumbling to turn on the lamp on my nightstand. The yellow light illuminated the empty bedroom. The breathing had stopped. I checked under the bed and in the closet. Nothing there. I tried to convince myself I had just imagined it, but I didn't sleep well the rest of the night. I decided to talk to the building manager about it in the morning. She reassured me that these old units often made odd noises as they settled. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was something more sinister. That evening, I invited my friend Jen over for dinner, hoping the company would help calm my nerves. We were washing dishes in the kitchen when I saw it. A dark shadow darted across the living room, moving fast, scurrying behind the couch. "Did you see that?" I cried out. Jen gave me a strange look. "See what?" I quickly searched around the couch and across the room. Nothing. Jen crossed her arms and frowned. Okay, seriously, what's going on with you? You're acting really weird. I sank down on the couch, head in hands. I'm sorry. I keep hearing and seeing strange things here, I mumbled. I think there might be something living in the walls. Jen sat down and put a hand on my shoulder. Sweetie, there's nothing in the walls. You just moved into a new place. It's normal to get a little spooked. I glanced at her doubtful face and realized she was right. I was probably just scaring myself over nothing. The next morning, I resolved to stop letting this place get to me. It was just an old building with some creaks and groans. Nothing to be afraid of. After a hot shower, I noticed the bathroom mirror was all fogged up despite the fan being on. As I reached for my towel, I saw it. A name, eerily traced through the condensation. Samuel. I stumbled back with a gasp, slipping on the damp linoleum. By the time I composed myself, the name had evaporated. Heart racing, I quickly dressed and left for work. Maybe someone was just playing a prank on me. Yeah, that had to be it. Some bored neighborhood kid messing around. But deep down, I knew that wasn't it. Whatever was in this place, it knew my name. That night, I stopped by the corner store to pick up some snacks. As I was paying, the cashier gave me an odd look. Doing some renovations? He asked casually. I shook my head, confused. Oh, just curious about those claw marks. Looks like something really shredded up your back. My blood ran cold. I rushed to the restroom to check, but saw nothing there. Trembling, I grabbed my bag and hurried out. The noises continued over the next few weeks. I'd hear the scratching in the walls, the slow dragging footsteps across the ceiling. Sometimes even weird muttering voices late at night. Dark shapes still darted through the apartment in my periphery, but always vanished when I turned. Story number 5. Was someone in my house currently? Did they steal anything? Did they watch me sleep? Did they do anything to me while I was asleep? I couldn't say for sure. I thought I heard something behind the drywall in my bedroom that night. Just a faint scratching, like nails trying to dig through wood. I sat there frozen, listening as it moved slowly, inch by inch, across the wall. The crack in the wall had been there for a while, a jagged hole where pipes or wires peeked through. But that night, it changed. The edges of the crack seemed to stretch outward, as if something was pushing from inside. I turned on the flashlight, shone it at the crack. That's when I saw it. Something dark and twisted pushing a thin limb through the opening. It moved like a spider, slow and deliberate, seeking to escape. I wanted to scream, but no sound came. I watched in horror as the creature's arm wriggled, crawling further out. My heart pounded so loud, I was sure whoever else was in the house would hear. And then it stopped. The limb withdrawn. The crack, just a crack again. The darkness swallowed it. The scratching ceased. Was it ever really there? I'm not sure. But I sleep with lights on now, and I never ignore a strange sound in the walls ever again. Story number 6. They said the house we moved into was nearly 100 years old. I stood at the fork. Across the landing was another door. The cheap white paint was visibly flaked and cracked. On the far wall, close to the ground, was a single vent. I eventually put my ear to the wall and began to slide alongside it, listening for the source. The breathing was louder now. I flattened myself to the plaster until I faced the vent, where the breathing was the loudest. "Hello?" came a voice from beyond the vent. "Who's there?" I froze dead in my tracks. The voice was distinctly feminine. "I live here," whispered the voice. "It isn't safe out there. Not for me." "How long have you been there?" I asked. "A long time. Too long, in fact. Now I'm the only one left. Everyone else is dead." Story number 7.
A few weeks ago, I moved into a seemingly ordinary house, but what I've uncovered is anything but ordinary. It all began innocently enough, with subtle, unexplainable noises that I try to brush off as the house settling or the wind outside. But as the days passed, those noises grew more persistent, more eerie. Late at night, I'd hear faint whispering, like a clandestine conversation just beyond the drywall. One evening, curiosity got the better of me, and I decided to investigate. Armed with a flashlight and a sense of dread, I began to knock on the walls to locate the source of the sounds. That's when I stumbled upon a loose panel in the basement. It led to a narrow, dark passage. I had to know what was hidden within. Crawling through the cramped space, my heart pounding, I reached the small chamber where dim candlelight flickered. There, I found the makeshift bed, old photographs and eerie drawings on the walls. It was clear that someone had been living here, in my house, undetected for who knows how long. The walls were adorned with names and dates, all pointing to a single conclusion. This secret occupant wasn't alone. They had companions. And the most chilling part was that some of those dates were recent, suggesting others had ventured into these walls but never returned. My blood ran cold as I heard footsteps approaching the entrance to the passage. Panicked, I retreated back to the basement, sealed the panel, and tried to pretend that what I had seen and heard didn't exist. But the whispering continued, growing louder and more sinister. I can't escape the feeling that I'm being watched, that there are eyes on me even when I'm alone. I don't know who these hidden occupants are, what they want, or what secrets lie within the walls of my house. I'm trapped here, Reddit, and I fear that the presence lurking in the dark may not be content to stay hidden much longer. Please help me. Story number 8. I moved into an old house last year. At first, everything seemed normal, until I started hearing noises from the attic, footsteps pacing back and forth late at night. I assumed it was just the old house settling, until one day I heard coughing, and then someone whispering my name. I called the landlord, but he insisted the house had been empty for months. I was starting to get really scared. One night, I climbed up to the attic with a flashlight. That's when I saw him, hiding behind boxes, filthy and pale, staring at me with wide, terrified eyes. He explained that he had been living in the attic for months. He had no family, no home, and had been sneaking in at night, eating my food, hiding whenever I was around. I was frozen, not knowing whether to call the police or run. The scariest part is, I realized how much he had been observing me. He knew my schedule, my habits, even when I was alone in the house. After the police arrived, he was arrested, but I still can't shake the feeling that someone could be hiding in the empty corners of my home. Story number 9. I moved into a charming old house in a quiet neighborhood, eager to start fresh. The first few nights were peaceful, but then I began to hear faint whispers coming from the wall behind my bed. At first, I thought it was just the house settling, but the whispers grew louder each night. One evening, I decided to investigate. I pressed my ear against the wall and listened intently. To my horror, the whispers stopped abruptly, followed by a soft thud, as if something or someone had moved. Terrified, I called the landlord, but he insisted the house was empty and had been for years. Desperate for answers, I hired a contractor to inspect the wall. When they cut into it, they discovered a hidden crawl space. Inside, they found a small makeshift living area, blanket wrappers, and personal belongings. It was clear that someone had been living there, undetected for who knows how long. The police were called, but the person was never found. The whispers stopped after that night, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I moved out since that night, but I can't stop thinking, what if they're still out there, hiding in someone else's walls right now? Have you ever experienced something like this? Tell me in the comments. I want to know that I'm not the only one who's heard whispers behind the walls.